afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of something entirely new, which makes it not another episode, but we start out always with that practically, with me, your ever charming host, Imperial Dane. And we're off here to what I, in a creative fit of sheer genius, have decided to call PropagandaFields, after suggestion, that is for the concept itself, of, basically analysing the maps themselves, pointing out different, vital spots and sort of things you can do on a map to sort of help newer players get acclimatized to them. So, PropagandaFields, and we are starting out here with a classic Semoisky, classic in that, based on the even more classic map, Semois. So I will be analysing this map in a sense, trying to give players sort of an idea of where things go, sort of what structures are good mining spots, and sort of good moves you might sort of be able to make on this map, for example. And I will be doing so with other 1 vs 1 maps and 2 vs 2 maps available in rotation. No 3 vs 3s or 4 vs 4s. So keep that in mind. They're already there since I don't cast them. But Semoisky, there's sort of a series of hotspots, if you will, on this map. And of course the primary one essentially is the village itself. Most of the fighting has a great tendency of basically happening here, partly because it's also the shortest point between the two bases, but also there with a lot of structures, a lot of heavy cover, and of course the central victory point, which means that no matter what, it is going to be needed. And of course the village itself presents many unique challenges, thanks to sort of the structure itself, the terrain that can be vaulted over. Choose out, of course, all the small paths you can, for example, take to sort of maneuver around your opponent and sort of try to sort of do nasty things. And of course you also got the 2 sort of cut-off points here, vital at each sort of entrance here, almost to the village as well, where usually a lot of pressure is sort of laid down. And also a quick note about these 2 spots here, they also tend to be very good artillery spots, because they are essentially the shortest sort of spot here to get into the battlefield, essentially between the players' bases. And thus generally you're more likely, for example, if you have to fire artillery in the blind, to shoot here. So already there's a little pro tip, if you will. Structures sort of covering it tend to be here and here, though this one, they're a bit tricky to sort of get to properly cover. Generally you want to do it with a machine gun, because overall coverage is not so well here with, for example, infantry with a rifle. So this building is actually a bit better due to the higher number of windows, and overall, for example, with another structure here, this point is sort of better covered by buildings, whereas here there's actually only one house, and no, most of the windows are actually pointed away from it. So generally you want a machine gun here if you actually sort of want to cover up things here. Though on the other hand, the building can sort of be good for covering here and here with infantry. A good tip for always with sort of with infantry is, number of windows. If there's only one window, for example, covering the spot you want a machine gun, heavy or light. More windows, for example, 4, you want riflemen, for example. For example, here also the church, very popular sort of spot to defend. The thing is, it's actually quickly negated here through, popping in here and shooting it here, or from here. So all you to sort of really get anything out of the church, you either need sort of a machine gun to sort of do something, or maybe a sniper. Though that tends to be less rare and certainly not available to all armies. Generally the church will sort of better cover angles around here or here. And to a certain extent that can then be negated through buildings and other fun things as well. So overall, while it does tend to be a sort of popular feature, and certainly you can use it to sort of basically make it more difficult for your opponent to move around here. At the same time, it's not such a dominating structure either. It basically sort of obstruct things. Though at the same time, a clever player might say, I'll pop some barbed wire down here, ensuring he can't sort of easily do something around here. In fact, you could even wire off sort of things here. And in fact, that's sort of one of the more secret things you could do about a village, which generally few people try. And that's actually sort of lay down proper amounts of wire to sort of basically obfuscate your opponent's movement, make it hard for them to sort of take cover, but even move towards different structures. And here's sort of a little trick I picked up from the first company here, which should more or less still be applicable, though I've never really gone around to testing it. But basically, this structure is actually really, really good for dominating most of the village, particularly the center victory point here, with a heavy machine gun, if you actually wire off things properly. And by that meaning is depending on where you're fighting from. If you're fighting from a southern base, you want to wire off this spot here around, in fact this spot, and around here as well. Basically right around there. In fact, that creates a sort of nice sort of idea of where to sort of angle it, and around here as well from that tree to sort of here. And you can actually prevent your opponent from making a direct run towards the heavy machine gun inside the building, but at the same time you can sort of cover a nice large amount of sort of, well, real estate, and basically make it very difficult for your opponent to make any move into the village without coming under fire from the machine gun, and he won't be able to sort of clear it out easily. Same thing, for example, if you're then from the south, you want sort of cover up around here with some barbed wire again. Essentially it's sort of at an arm's length so they can't easily sort of get off a grenade. So that, for example, is sort of a little more a secret of Semoisky, if you will. Again, this building does not seem so impressive, but with a heavy machine gun and the right amount of barbed wire, it can actually make the village very sort of difficult to take fully in its entirety. Another little trick here for also this is actually sneaking around here. A lot of players sort of tend to neglect this little bit of behind here, and some players can in fact then sneak up around here. For example, with the southern players being a bit of an obnoxious fellow, you sneak around here, do some damage, or vice versa. So it's a good thing to actually keep an eye on this, and clever players will generally try to lay down mines, for example here, S-mines, anti-infantry mines, whatever, but generally mines here can in fact be a very good spot as well, in particular because minesweepers, they will be a bit hard to spot due to the shadows unless they're S-mines. A demo charge could in theory also work here, although then you might blow away some of the bushes here, so do so at your own risk. Other good mining spots, well, we're talking about it, in fact here, very sort of natural spot to sort of mine because it's basically just entrance to the village, but also sort of very close quarters, which is also why, as you know, if you sort of haven't had this time for spot, you should generally have some mines which take around here. This is also a vital spot for sort of getting hit by mines. Here can also work. Generally here, I mean overall, the roads through the village right here is a good spot, and also here's a really good spot. This bit of crossroads. Good lord, that for some reason got stuck. But right here also very, very good spot for mining. Again, you also one way then have to expect mines to be there quite often. Here can also be a work, but also right around here is in fact very popular. And that's for either side. I mean, for the southern players to sort of make it more difficult for the opponent to move from here, and of course from the northern players sort of prevent them from sort of easily moving up here, and in particular harassing the fuel point. Now in Company 2, harassment of the fuel points is actually a lot rarer. It's also a lot trickier to sort of actually defend from than was in Company of Heroes due to the larger capping ground here now. So in a certain sense, I mean, you can actually get a lot more out of sort of aggressively harassing it. And if you have, for example, the Russians, you can always lay some sandbags out here at the end, sort of make it more difficult for you to be dislodged while you're doing it, and that's a little clever trick there. So in overall, you can generally get a lot more with it because a lot of players tend not to sort of defend it very well nowadays. And in that case, they'll have to sort of either divert units or lay down a lot of mines, sort of make it tricky. So in that regard, you know, that's also always a good spot here in Semoisky, headed here, because not only do you harass the field, you also essentially hit what is basically a pressure point for the opponent. If you attack here right next to his base, that generally also tends to cause a reaction for him to draw forces back to defend here. So in that regard, if you're actually finding yourself under pressure around here in the center, but you have a small path here, go for this one, for example, and you can force him to sort of ease up here unless he fancies not having fuel. So a little trick there. There's of course also a little bit of maneuvering ground here. It's actually a bit of a blind spot for a lot of players, so for example if he does have this sort of more defended, you can try and sneak up around here and that way get at him. Similarly down here there's a bit of a blind spot over here, combined with the terrain here can be vaulted over. This spot also tends to be a very sort of prime spot for mining, or barbed wire is also very popular around here. This building for example is also, by the way, good for infantry, good for dominating this small sort of island. And a bit of barbed wire again, depending on where, can sort of help you again. You know, for example, again a bit of barbed wire if you're sort of from the south, just to make it harder for him to make a direct move at it. Also a bit here, just maybe angled like this, so you can still move around, but at the same time, if he wants to take a direct move, he has to sort of move around in a wider arc, giving your machine gun more time to shoot at him. And if you're from the north, a bit sort of crisscrossing here, at least forcing him to sort of move slower, could also work out quite nicely. I mean, the options are there as well. Also a good spot for mining, by the way, and for those with demo charges, good mining spots also means good demo charge spots, so keep that in mind as well. Though of course, I mean, depending on where, for example, mining, for example, this building with a demo charge is also a good spot, since again it's very popular due to again it's very good sort of infantry presence. And now for those that sort of love to pop in infiltrators, partisans, Jaeger infantry, Fallschirmjägers, small jets, for example, like this one, or even the building here, also quite good choices. And in fact, there's a little one up here which you can also use to actually say, you know, pop some anti-tank pods in case your opponent pulls back some armor for, say, some dire repairs. And in fact, this map is due to all the buildings, in fact, all over the place. I mean, this is one of the rare buildings where there's basically a shit almost everywhere, or a structure sort of nicely hidden away, even here in the far corner. And by the way, these buildings practically never see action, but still, this is actually also a good spot for, say, popping in some infiltrators and then causing a bit of havoc. So in that regard, this is a golden map for infiltrators as well. So that is also a neat little trick to keep in mind. These points over here also see action. I mean, generally things sort of get around this cut-off point and this cut-off point. This is a good mining spot, by the way. Similarly, here is a good mining spot. Of course, in that case, you know, you have to sort of be expecting mines as well. But generally, action over here in these points tend to sort of be less aggressive. It tends to be sort of more late game pushes to quickly take back some victory points. Generally, you're good off with a small emplacement or something here, or to sort of guard it with some mines or a bit of barbed wire. So that's also a little trick there. I mean, the building's also not necessarily so good from defending from, except with maybe a machine gun, though. Even then, in some cases, they're not going to be that effective. Also a good spot to sort of defend the left flank from here with this building, for those curious. But again, most of the action tends to be very much around here, so a more clever player, in fact, generally can find a lot of benefit from attacking across the wide fields on either side, and sort of that way try to draw your opponent out, or basically hold the rest of the map. Also, a very important note from the northern player: trying to defend from around here is actually a very bad idea. It's not really good ground from defending from. You really want to sort of push in here if you want to at least defend from this, otherwise you sort of basically have to attack from elsewhere, because holding out here is generally a losing proposition due to the way things are angled. It gives the opponent defending here a much better sort of chance of breaking things up, but also due to the building here, you can have a very hard time at. In fact, also the fences right here, it makes it very difficult for you to sort of lead an effective defense, and a quick armored rush, for example, can cause you quite a bit of a headache. So keep that in mind as well, sort of a little beware of things. And I think that sort of covers it for the major points here on Semoisky. As it is, of course, if there are any major updates, I'll probably make a sort of follow-up videos, but I don't think there'll be any sort of here. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this little series. I hope it gave you some ideas and hopefully helped you a bit better understanding this map and maybe getting a bit better gameplay out of it. Of course, suggestions and improvements are quite welcome, since I'm still, you know, trying my hand at this, and of course I'll keep that in mind for future videos if it's something I can actually do something about. So this is Imperial Dane saying thank you all for watching. Hope you learned something, and bye everyone.